Alongside Silksong, Terraria is another one of my favorite games. Thus, I wanted to have the second video of this channel be all about Terraria. So let's get to it and talk about this challenge run. What's a mechanic that is very important in games like Terraria or Minecraft? The mining, the adventures, the fights? Well, for Minecraft it is part of its name. Said mechanic is crafting. So what is this challenge run about? Well, today I want to beat Terraria without crafting anything. No crafting bench, no furnace, no form of crafting furniture at all. Well, I can still use them for furnishing, but yeah, that's about it. Crafting in general in sandbox games is quite important, as it allows you to get new gear or to upgrade your existing one. You can get new blocks or items to decorate your world and so on. What would happen if you couldn't do this while playing Terraria? Well, it would be a nightmare, at least in the early game, that's for sure. Well, let's get to it and see how it went. First though, the rules. Well, it's only really one big rule, which is no crafting. Like I said earlier, I am allowed to use crafting tables as furniture for houses or to just put them down, but I'm not allowed to use the crafting interface with them, or well, without any crafting station either. The only items I can get and use are ones that come from drops, or well, that I can mine or find in the world. This pretty much means that most of the usual options are not really available, as I can't craft or armors or tools, so I need to get crafty. Wait, I can't actually do that though. Other than that, I will be playing on normal mode. The reason is I haven't really touched Terraria in quite some time, and I also dread the existence of Master Mode. And to even show you how good I am at this game, you can see the following footage. Quite embarrassing. But if you guys really like this video and want to see more, I can go ahead and give the Master Mode version a try. So yeah, if you do enjoy the video, why not leave a like, comment, or subscribe? So this run starts like any normal playthrough. I spawn in and take a look around, mark my spawn point and start exploring the surroundings. Right, that base. Well, the two pillars that would keep me safe. Don't want to talk about it, just something to get me through the game. No actual building skills required for this run. I did get quite a bit lucky while exploring the surface with an umbrella and later a boomerang that managed to help me quite a bit early. I have no way to craft a ranged weapon like a bow and arrows, so the range provided by the boomerang was really welcome. As the first night approached, I went down in the underground. Now it's time for the first part of my plan. Armor. So why am I going in the underground for armor? Well, most of the early armors are either craftable or not that usable, as they provide too low defense even for normal mode. The late pre-hard mode armors are all craftable with molten, crimson, etc. There are though 3 armor sets that drop from different enemies that have pretty good defense. The problem is the drop rate. First would be Ancient Cobalt, which gives 17 defense and some magic stats which I can't even use as I barely have enough mana. But the drop chance is 0.33%, and it's also only from certain jungle enemies. The Ancient Shadow Armor has the exact same problem, but with an even lower drop rate at 0.19%, but it is stronger generally speaking. Okay then, no grinding for God knows how many hours. What then? Well, the last armor is Gladiator Armor. Now that's a set people don't really think about, as it is only found in the marble biome as a drop from hoplites. But how good is the drop rate? Well, actually, it's really good, with a 1 in 7 chance to get it. With it only being 3 defense lower than Ancient Shadow Armor, it is quite a good choice. Also gives knockback immunity, so that's pretty neat. Then the first point on my agenda is to find a marble biome. And the first thing I get to is somewhere close to a granite biome instead. Quite funny, if only granite enemies also had an armor set as a drop. Though, 20 minutes later I did manage to find a marble biome. Honestly, I barely saw the different textures of the blocks in there, as otherwise I would have just missed it entirely. So it's hoplite time. But first, a quick back to go over the spoils, including the first piece of armor, as I got it on the second hoplite kill. Though at this point, as I played, I thought the chance to drop was lower, Please don't tell anyone I actually didn't check the chance of drops before starting this. Alongside that, I found a couple houses and some solo golden chests, which gave me some of the best early game accessories with Hermes boots and a cloud in a bottle. That combo is a killer one for early bosses and exploration. After that quick intermission, I went ahead to farm for the rest of the armor. But first I had to get that place more flat, as all the holes and water were not fun to deal with. A bunch of mining later, it is time to grind. It didn't take too long as the drop chance is pretty good, but there's always a chance you end up getting the same piece a bunch of times. Though that wouldn't be a problem, as I do need something else from these guys. And that is weapons. Weapons are also quite limited as I can't craft bows or swords. I have to rely fully on what I get as a drop, and the hoplites happen to drop a pretty good consumable throwing spear with the javelins. Good damage, piercing, and fast to throw. What more do you want? Well, that Gladius that also dropped was really useful during and after the grind for quite a while. Now that I got some good accessories, an actual armor, and some weapons that are fast and piercing, what do you guys think I will do? Well, take on the Brain of Cthulhu, of course. The raid itself is not that bad when it comes to normal mode, as the brain image clone things don't appear during the fight. Actually, the most annoying part during this fight was the fact that I had to place down blocks inside the heart rooms, as I can't really get sticky bombs. A sad day indeed. Anyway, the javelins made quick work of the creepers, as they can pierce up to 3 targets, and then for the main body is a combination of the Gladius, javelins, and the Undertaker I had just gotten from the first Crimson Heart. What does this actually unlock though, as I can't use Crimtane or the tissue samples? Well, technically I got what I wanted after the first Crimson Heart, but the drops from the brain can sell for quite a bit of money. Yeah, I wanted the Undertaker so I can have the arms dealer show up. Now, that ended up being a whole other ordeal. For NPCs to show up, you need to get valid houses. For that you need a bunch of things, including blocks, which those are easy to get, just get wood. Light sources, which torches drop from zombies, slimes, pots, chests, there's lots of ways to get torches. Or you can use candelabras from the underground houses. Doors you can get from the underground houses as well, or you can use platforms, which you can get those from there too. Tables are a bit interesting because you can use other furniture that is found within the underground houses there too. And finally, chairs. Chair? How do I get those though? Initially I thought that underground cabins can't have chairs as I didn't find any in the ones I was in, or maybe I am just blind, who knows. So my plan was to scour the surface for some giant trees and pray that there would be some rooms with chairs down there. Well, I explored the whole surface and I only really got a finch staff and a furniture item that can only be really used as a table. Now I had 2 more choices. Either I go for floating islands or I go in the dungeon. Well, neither would be fun. I got no gravitational potions for floating islands, and while I could rope up to space and glide using the umbrella, that would be kind of annoying to do multiple times. Instead, I decided to check the dungeon entrance until depth 0, but there were no chairs high enough. There was a bewitching table quite close, but it wouldn't help as, again, it is a table item. Well, time to prepare for Skeletron then. Honestly, I could have taken Skeletron on right then and there, but I had some time to kill because it was daytime. Thus, I went to get more javelins. Alongside that, I used the platforms I gathered underground and in the dungeon entrance, and with the help of an ancient Tibetan monk technique, I was able to make the platforms cover twice the normal surface area for the arena. As night came, I was prepared, and honestly, it wasn't too bad of a fight. Normal mode Skeletron feels underwhelming without its shooting skulls. Took down the arms and then the head remained. The javelins were quite good for this, with piercing again, but the arc at which they were thrown was a bit of a problem, but nothing I couldn't handle. Out of the dungeon I got 2 pretty good things. First was the Blue Moon, which would be a great weapon upgrade as maces got buffed quite a bit with their rework, and second was a lot of furniture. Tables, chairs, alchemy stations, even a sofa. Now with all of the ingredients present I can start building the NPC housing and get the arms dealer. Though I have a feeling I have forgotten something. Oh right, I need to go back to get my platforms. No wait, I don't have walls. Okay, that is a pretty big problem. Why? Because I have no hammer and I must break down walls. So, hammers. In pre-hard mode there are literally only 2 non-craftable hammers I could get. One is technically right at the start of hard mode though, with the Poon Hammer. The other is the rockfish, and I really don't want to fish at this time. What about hammocks though? No, only two in pre-hard mode and both require crafting. Am I screwed? Do I have to fish? Well, I could take on Wall of Flesh with javelins, or the actual solution, I could use bombs to blow up walls. Quite interesting, and weird that I didn't think of it earlier. So yeah, if you take a bomb to any underground cabin and throw it inside the room, whatever background wall the bomb will hit will drop on the ground. Thank God I thought of this, because I really didn't want to do Wall of Flesh with javelins, or of course I have to fish. Using the newly acquired walls together with my Frankenstein level of furnishing, lots of different kinds, I have made a bunch of NPC houses. I didn't need more than one, as I could have gotten the merchant, nurse, or dryad as the first NPC arrival, but I did get quite lucky and the arms dealer showed up quickly. I then took hold of the valuables I had lying around, sold everything as the old weapons were no longer useful, and the ores and gems I couldn't use since they would need to be processed to crafting. That gave me more than enough money for a mini shark and 10,000 bullets. I do hope that's enough. Now what? Just take on the Wall of Flesh? Almost. I want to get some bee nades, as that was kinda my plan. Get a mini shark to defeat Queen Bee, and then use the bee nades and mini shark for the wall too. Now this didn't take too long, as there were two hives really close to the surface. I guess this is what using a small world does to world gen. The fights weren't too bad, as Queen Bee is quite easy with a bit of dodging. The worst part was that the small bees it shot didn't really die in one bullet from my mini sharks, so they ended up coming really close, dealing lots of damage, and I had to use the Blue Moon for them. Unfortunately, I only really got 16 bee nades in the two fights, but I don't want to scour the jungle for the chance of finding one more hive, even though there could not be another, or for a fight with Wall of Flesh, which I know is quite easily winnable. I then went ahead and used the elevator I made earlier in the run to get to the underworld, though I did die at full damage as I didn't get to make a straight line for the elevator because of some lava and stuff that was in the way. But there wasn't really a need, as bombs had finished the job a bit to the side. Once in the underworld, I had to do two things: make a hell bridge and then get myself a guide voodoo doll. Well, step 1 was quite easy other than the mobs trying to swarm me, but that is already something normal when preparing for the Wall of Flesh. Used some of the stone that I got during mining alongside whatever other blocks I got. For the doll though, well, that took longer than usual because most of the time I have to fight a bunch of doll demons while making the bridge, but this time they took their sweet time appearing. After finally getting one, I threw it in the lava and started the fight. Said fight wasn't too bad. I tried taking care of the hunger with my mace, but to be honest I did more damage to myself than to the hungries. So I just threw the beanies to clear them out and deal some extra damage to the Wall of Flesh. Since in normal mode hungries don't respawn, that made using the mini shark a really good idea. A minute or so later, the wall was defeated and I entered hard mode. Thankfully, Wall of Flesh dropped me the Clockwork Assault Rifle. A pretty good early hard mode weapon, but while that rifle is pretty good, I have a different weapon in mind as the main one for now. A gun that is obtainable quite early and helped me quite literally until post-golem with how good it was. The Uzi. Now, the not so fun part about farming for an Uzi is the hard mode jungle enemies and the rate at which the angry trappers spawn, and of course the rate at which it drops. The hard mode jungle while wearing gladiator armor literally felt like master mode. Honestly, this whole hard mode playthrough felt a bit like master mode until the very end because of how low defense I had. This was also the first of quite a few farming sessions I had to do because now I kinda require specific items for both boss fights and gear. Other than the Uzi drop, I also got the Tavern Keep NPC, which will be very important later, and a bunch of presents. The Christmas period for Terraria started already when I began getting the footage for this video. That actually ended up being quite good by giving me some food items to get major buffs. With Uzi in hand, I wanted to go for some armor upgrades and an actual minion I could use in combat. This led me on a wild goose chase, but I got a bunch of miscellaneous upgrades that ended up helping quite a lot. Said armor is the Crystal Assassin armor, which to be fair, until the first Queen Slime kill, I didn't think too much about getting. Though with how the drops from said boss went, I got like 3 or 4 full sets of it anyway. So what other things did I get during that time? I managed to get a hook from a hallowed mimic as I was anyway going for the Daedalus bow for the destroyer fight. Got one of the random drops for the mech summons, which was really good, as I did need to farm those just a tiny bit later though. Got a flame cracker thinking it would help me, but I ended up just not using it at all. Later, goblins finally attacked as I didn't have a way to summon the invasion. I can't craft the summoning item. It did take a bit of struggling as the hard mode only warlock was a bit hard to deal with as I still had early pre-hard mode armor. Now with the Goblin Tinkerer available to me, I was able to get the reforges for my weapons and accessories, and I was finally able to beat Queen Slime. Well, after a few more failed attempts and increasing the size of the arena quite a bit. I kinda underestimated the size I would need, as the little slimes the Queen summons are really annoying to deal with, especially in Phase 2. Phase 1 was not too bad, as the piercing bullets of the Uzi would deal with most of the slimes on the ground, but in Phase 2 I have to focus on hitting the flying version of the Queen that allows the smaller slimes to grow in number, which leads to a ton of projectiles being thrown at me. And I also didn't have knockback resistance anymore, as I didn't have the gladiator armor on me, and I didn't want to waste a slot on a cobalt shield. A few more fights and I got not only the full armor set, but also the mount. Weirdly enough, I somehow ended up with 2 slime staffs. I am not sure how that happened, but it isn't the summon weapon I wanted by fighting the Queen Slime. The reason I didn't think about getting Crystal Assassin armor is, well, because I will be using the armors sold by the Tavern Keep for the rest of the playthrough. Of course, the problem is that he doesn't sell them yet, and I also don't have any tokens to buy them with. The selling problem will be solved after a mechanical boss fight, but first I want to get all the tokens needed for the first armor set. With the piercing bullets of the Uzi, it was quite easy to get through the first version of the Old One's army, but it took a bunch of completing the event to get enough medals for the full set, as this first version gives very few. With enough medals saved up, it was time to go for the first mech boss. This is where the Crystal Assassin armor came in clutch, as I was able to have a hard mode armor set for this first fight. For the twins, I used the mount from Queen Slime together with the Uzi, but I didn't use normal bullets as I didn't need the piercing, and silver bullets deal more damage anyways. Now, how did I get silver bullets? Well, the arms dealer sells them. The fight itself was not too bad, as it was just the usual twins fight. Stand far enough, dodge the flames and lasers, and hit the boss with as many bullets as you can. The drops from the boss itself are quite useless, as both the souls and bars it drops need to be crafted into something to be usable. After the fight, I was able to get an upgrade by getting the ranged version of the Old One army set and the first sentry I could use. Now, this armor is pretty much the same as the Crystal Assassin in defense, but it gives extra summon and range damage, so overall it is better for damage. Now with a new armor obtained, it's time to try the other mechs. But for that, I really need to make a farm. Here I opted for an ocean jungle farm, as I thought that would be the best. It's pretty much from the good old days of 1.2 key farming, back when they first came out. But there was a tiny problem now. I think in some recent patches, or I had just forgotten, there were some changes to the way aggro works on the Arapayamas, so that they need line of sight to the player in order to get to them. Overall, it wasn't that big of a deal, as I was able to make some form of weird shape with holes in it so the fish could see me, and I was still able to make a farm with some jungle grass seeds and the blue candle for more spawns. Thankfully, I had the random drop for the twins, and the other two didn't take as long as I thought they would either, especially them having quite a low percentage chance to drop. The main problem was that I screwed up the first destroyer fight I did, as I didn't have the Daedalus Stormbow yet and I thought I could do the fight with the Uzi, and I was very wrong, so I had to farm another summon. I decided though, before I go for more boss summon farming, I would get the Daedalus bow finally, and since I was in the underground hollow waiting for mimics to spawn, I got some more Queen Slime summons, and finally got the Blade Staff. That will be a pretty decent DPS increase, since I can have 2 blades at a time, and, well, they're flying and deal more damage than, well, the Finch Staff. As for the bow, I forgot to record it. But to be honest, the hardest part about the biomimics is just waiting for them to spawn, as I can't craft the soul keys. The next mech boss summon that dropped was her Skeletron Prime, and again, not too bad of a fight. This time I used normal bullets for the Uzi, as the piercing would help hit multiple parts of the boss, and while sure, dealing damage to the arms doesn't kill the boss faster, it at least takes away from the danger you face by it having less attacks the less arms it has. With that and the slime mount, I was able to take down Skeletron Prime quite easily. I can't believe that the Destroyer is the one mech boss I lost to. Oh, also as you might have seen, I did get some life fruit before this fight, as they do start spawning as soon as one mech boss is down, and since I did defeat the twins first, there were some that had spawned in the jungle already. And now to get my revenge on that damn worm. It didn't take too long to get the summon for the Destroyer. Thankfully, there was a Blood Moon too, so that increased the spawns even further. While I didn't have holy arrows to take down the Destroyer even easier, I still was able to gather a bunch of Hellfire arrows from the underworld to use on the boss. Those explosions were pretty good for damage. Now, the area was kinda scuffed anyway, as I used the floating island above it to stay out of the range of the Destroyer, but it could still get up there with a good enough angle. Honestly, the worst thing about this boss, and the thing that makes it even hard to cheese, are the probes. Those balls are really annoying to deal with, as they can fly through walls and get to you no matter what. Thankfully, I was able to take down the final mech boss and get to the next stage of hard mode. The funniest thing is that for as much prep I needed to do for the mech bosses, for Plantera all I needed was the Uzi in a decently sized arena. Then again, if you just do circles around her, Plantera can't do much to you, especially in normal mode. You can outrun the bullets, and the worst thing that you would have to dodge are the spiky balls that fall to the ground. So yeah, I summoned my sentries and then started blasting. After a while, Plantera went down, and while I did want to get the Venus Magnum, I ended up with the Pygmy Staff, which honestly I think was a better drop overall, as the Uzi will not really drop off for a bit more. I know, kind of an underwhelming section of the video, but I did have everything prepared for the fight other than I guess potions. Normally, next up would be the Golem fight without a break, but I do need more medals for the next tier of armor that unlocks after defeating Golem. And I will not be doing tier 3 Old One's army for that, so a quick, but actually took a while, break to get enough medals. After that farming session, I went back to the jungle, got to the temple that I had found previously and dug to the entrance. I can't wait to get a better pickaxe. The temple itself wasn't too bad, as if you pay a bit of attention to the floor you can easily see where the pressure plates are and avoid the traps. The enemies were also quite easy, especially with pygmies and Uzi. Now Golem on the other hand ended up kicking my behind. I am getting more and more embarrassed by these easy bosses. Because of this, I went ahead and got a bunch more life fruits. Honestly, one thing I really miss are a constant supply of Spelunker potions. Honestly, potions in general. For as much as I don't like farming for them, they are quite needed for a playthrough, as they do allow you to have more defense, life regen, speed, etc, etc. Anyway, after getting some more HP, it was time to do Golem, but I wanted to change my strategy a bit. I would use the Phantom Phoenix that dropped from the Old One's army, because it has a higher damage than the Uzi, and it would still pierce with both the unholy arrows I had and the Phoenix it shoots. That, together with me actually dodging a bit better than before, did get me the win, and thankfully the first drop was the Pixel. I can finally mine properly. After that, I went back home to get the upgrade to my current armor, which ended up being a bit of a mistake, as you will see later. I was also able to get the Leaf Wings. Well, I could have gotten them earlier, but for the Golem fight I didn't really need wings, so I decided to leave them for after. And lastly, I did get some new accessories from the Witch Doctor, which were summon related, which will actually replace my sentry related accessories. I thought for a while which upgrades would be the best after Golem for Moonlord preparations. There were the Frost and Pumpkin Moon events, which had some weapons, but to be honest, the ranged weapons either needed specialized ammo or are too inaccurate, and the melee ones are either through melee or have an arc, so I decided to go for the other event available now, which technically should give better weapons anyway, as it is post-Golem rather than post-Plantera. That is the Martian Invasion. Time for the final prep. Or so I thought. For the invasion itself, I had to wait for a probe to appear, and I think this is the worst part of the whole event, especially after you have done it the first time. Sure, if you get all drops you want during the first invasion, congrats, you're all good. But if you're like me and needed 3 whole invasions, waiting on the probe, which gets reduced spawn rate by the way after completing the event once, takes more than the event itself. So what do I want from here? Well, almost all of the drops from the Martian Saucer. The Influx Weaver will be a good melee weapon with a projectile that deals damage multiple times with the effect that it has. The Xeno Popper, while a bit hard to aim, has a really high DPS. The Xeno Staff will be almost the best summon I can get, and of course the Cosmic Car Key will allow me to have flight while having full damage accessories, not needing to use wings. It is interesting how these flying mounts have kind of made wings slightly irrelevant, but I still feel like at least the leaf wings would be much better than the flying slime mount, as you do have a lot more horizontal speed in comparison. The saucer fight itself wasn't too bad for the first few times with the Uzi, but honestly it became even easier after I got the Xeno Popper. I still had to get through 3 events as the Xeno Staff just refused to drop, and honestly not getting it would have been a pretty big DPS loss, as I can have up to 3 minions at this point using the accessories that I had gotten and the bewitching table. With everything ready and reforged, it is time to take on the pillars and then Moonlord. The cultist fight is never that hard, and especially now in normal mode with the Xeno Popper, though I so miss having chlorified bullets. That made fights so much easier. I did get hit a bunch, but the DPS was quite high, so I was able to take down the cultist quite fast. The cultist down, the lunar event started. Weirdly enough, the solar pillar, which usually I die the most to, wasn't bad at all. I was sitting on the ground with the Influx Weaver and hitting enemies while my alien summons dealt with the flying worms. The other pillars though, well, to be honest, it was mostly the Vortex pillar. What do you mean they deal 120 damage on normal mode with decent armor? It felt like I was in master mode. The other 2 pillars were a bit annoying, but nothing I couldn't handle by just throwing myself at it, worst case scenario. At least for these ones I wouldn't die in 3 hits. After that, it was time for Moonlord, and I barely lasted a minute. Now that's not good, as I do have to redo the pillar event every single time I have to fight Moonlord. Now I could go for an excuse of I haven't played in a while, which I haven't, that is true, but to be honest, the reality is that I had always been a casual player when it comes to this game. 3,000 hours on Steam and I still am not good enough. This is where the pain started last night, where I had to go to bed early because I had some stuff to do early in the morning, but I really wanted to try and finish recording this playthrough. I thought getting some potions would help, so I went through a lot of the underground areas and the underworld, opening chests and breaking pots. I ended up with a decent amount of potions, but none that were really essential like Iron Skin, and I was quite literally screwed. I decided to use these potions while reforging all my accessories to defense reforges to try to be able to tank more hits. Another lunar event later, and Moonlord took me out again. At this point it was quite late in the night and I had to get off, but then I realized while getting ready for bed that I could just farm for some other items. I could go for more medals and get the melee armor from the Tavern Keep. Nothing stopped me really from just being able to fully face tank the hits Moonlord sent my way. So the next day, after finishing the real life responsibilities I had, I got back on the medal grind. Thankfully, it was a lot faster as the tier 3 army drops a total of 100 medals if you fully finish the event. For that, the waves before Betsy were quite easy with the Influx Weaver and Xeno Popper. The Betsy fight itself was a bit intense as she does deal a decent amount of damage, and I was also a bit scared for the crystal, but the sentries took care of most of the ground enemies, so I could focus on Betsy herself and the small dragons that came with her. With all the medals needed, I bought the Valhalla armor and the tier 3 ballista, since it could help with some initial damage, especially with it being buffed by the Valhalla armor. Now there was one final piece of the puzzle, a homing weapon. Why? To allow me to focus mainly on dodging the attacks from Moonlord without worrying about aiming. And so I went for the Possessed Hatchet since it is the closest one in tier to Moonlord, as it is a Golem tier weapon. With a new armor, defense reforged accessories, and the Possessed Hatchet in hand, I went once more through the cultists and lunar event, finally arriving again at Moonlord. Honestly, this time the fight was a bit of a joke. I had so much more defense that I could tank a ton. Plus, there was the increased life regen from the armor, and me being able to focus a lot on dodging by having the Possessed Hatchet. As usual, I hit the top eye whenever it was open with the Influx Weaver and the Hatchet, while focusing on the other 2 eyes equally when the top one was closed. That allowed me to get all 3 eyes out at a similar time and not have to deal with the tries of Cthulhu while still having to stay too close to the boss. After the eyes were out, I tried keeping as much distance from the boss while still being in range for the hatchet, as a true eye laser would still hurt quite a bit. Around the end of the fight, I did end up being around half HP, but my potion was coming quite soon, in like 5 seconds anyway, so I don't think there is really a need to worry. Thus, I defeated Moonlord without being allowed to craft any item. Now, I did mention Shimmer at some point. I forgot to mention it in the video because, to be fair, it wasn't that big of a deal. I took a life fruit and a life crystal that I had found randomly within the world and threw them in the Shimmer. The reason why this works is because it is not crafting. It is transmuting one item into another. So it is allowed. Maybe I will be using Shimmer a lot more when it comes to the Master Mode version of this challenge if I ever get to it. Honestly, this whole challenge wasn't too bad. Pre-hard mode had its small challenges, but the worst part was really just getting the money for the mini shark. Once that was acquired, everything went to being pretty easy, as most of the time that's a weapon you would use anyway, even in a normal playthrough. The main challenge of hard mode was, well, farming. Both for the specific things like mech boss summons, but also farming the bosses themselves, as they really didn't want to drop what I needed when I needed it. Looking at Two-Blade Staff and Xeno Staff. In general, I think the true challenge will come if I end up doing a Master Mode version of this. Will I though? Not sure, that depends on if you guys want me to. So yeah, it was frustrating, but still a fun time, as I had to use some more niche knowledge and items compared to your normal progression. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I hope you also enjoyed this video. That's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.